Hey, this is Alex. Welcome to ThursdAI August 15th. Today on the pod, we had breaking news from Nous Research, which we got to at the end. So you would hear a conversation, a deep dive into Hermes 3, the first full fine-tune of Llama 3.1 405 billion parameters with the co-founder of Nous Research, Emozilla. We also had multiple big labs release multiple things. XAI released Grok2, OpenAI is back on top, and a bunch of other stuff as well. So here's the TLDR, and then you'll hear the rest of the show. As always, I appreciate you listening to this. We had over 4,000 people last week, and I think we had more this week. So the live show keeps growing, as well as the podcast. So if you're enjoying this, please share with your friends. And as always, because these are quite long, 2 hours long, I'm adding chapters. So whatever pod catcher you're using, you can listen to the TLDR 10 minutes and then decide which of the news items you want to hear. However, do not skip on the conversation with Emozilla. It was very, very interesting. Enjoy the show. Let's go. This is a TLDR, everything we've talked about on ThursdAI, August 15th, and there's quite a lot. First of all, we talked about OpenAI's confusing releases. OpenAI released another GPT-4o. So last week, we got an GPT-4o API version that was supporting structured outputs and was also better at coding, etc. And this week, they announced that anonymous chatbot, the LLama, is now the version that runs on ChatGPT and also available via API as ChatGPT-4o latest. And it's now on top of the LLM arena. It's number one on math, number one on complex prompts. It reclaimed the best LLM in the world, according to LLM. We talked about how confusing the release structure is because even OpenAI claims there are now two versions of ChatGPT that we should use. Very interesting conversation. And you should definitely give this new ChatGPT a try. This is what now runs on ChatGPT. But for developers, they still recommend you use the GPT-4o 2024-0806. We then covered at length that XAI, the company that trains under space uncle Elon Musk, released Grok2, which is quite an incredible achievement from a company that was like barely 6 months or a year in existence. And they released a frontier level model, Grok2, and also a distilled model, Grok2 Mini, that has a 75.5% on MMLU Pro, beating GPT-4o, at least from March, and beating Llama 3 405B, which is quite impressive. And also it can code now. So Grok with a K, not with a Q, can now code, can do math, can do all these things. And on LLM arena, it places number 4, which is interesting. Besides the fact that they've trained a model, they also have a product called Grok that's built into the X platform that has a few things that other models don't have. For example, it has access to real-time information via their APIs, via X. So it can access different tweets, can understand what's going on, can understand the zeitgeist, which is very interesting. It also has image creating capabilities that are via the API with Black Forest Labs Flux models that we've talked about. They also announced they're going to offer an enterprise API for this that's going to change the landscape of APIs and LLM providers. That's going to be very interesting as well. And we talked at length about how this model specifically is very differently uncensored or refuses less stuff, unlike other models like OpenAI and Claude and even Gemini, definitely Gemini. This Grok model is very free and refuses way less stuff, not only in what it will tell you, but also in what it will create in imagery. And together with the fact that Flux is a fairly freely trained model and it doesn't really have IP restrictions, so it can generate different characters from different movies, different logos, different things. Flux, Grok itself, the model, is also uncensored, so you can ask it for different political caricatures. So we've talked about how a few months before the elections now, everybody has access to the meme creation machine that looks fairly realistic thanks to space uncle Elon and the implications of this. So definitely worth listening to this conversation. We also covered that also this week, Google had their event, and Google showcased Gemini Live, which, unlike OpenAI that still didn't give us advanced voice mode, Gemini Live is their continuous conversation, free-flowing conversation mode with hand-free use and interruption and multiple voice options that is rolling out to Android devices around the world. And not only that, this is now built into Google's AI assistant, and it will have app integrations, including Keep and Task and utilities. This model will be able to do things for you, this Gemini that you'll be able to talk to. And it will have a deep integration with Android as well. Not only that, it's also now built into hardware like Pixel Buds Pro 2, and that you'll be able to walk around with a Gemini live in your ear and talk to it as well. They also announced some AI photo replacements, which is interesting as well. So if you're in that ecosystem, you just got a bunch of very interesting AI upgrades to your phone. And then we geeked out for a long time about Anthropic adding something for developers called prompt caching. Prompt caching is the ability for you as a developer to have long context conversations, or I guess long context API calls, to be cached on Anthropic side, so that you will pay for them less, and by less, 90% less for the cache tokens. This unlocks a lot of capabilities that were previously possible but very expensive, and now they're very cheap. How cheap? 90% basically means that Claude Sonnet 3.5, which is still considered one of the top models for coding, is going, for the cached version, is going to cost you like Claude Haiku, and Claude Haiku is going to cost you 3 cents per million tokens if you use the cached version, which is basically free. So we're still moving towards intelligence too cheap to meter, and while this doesn't improve the actual models, this does improve the developer experience, keeping developers in the Anthropic ecosystem. We've talked about prompt caching by DeepSeek last week, and now Anthropic releases this, and as we speculated last week with Matt Schumer on the pod, this will likely get to all of the labs and foundational serving APIs, because this just makes sense for everyone to do. It probably costs them less as well while they implement this caching. So I did a comparison of prompt caching and showed a general 70% reduction of costs for my use cases. It's really a great thing if you're a developer, very worth looking into and implementing as well. We then moved into AI art in the Fusion world, where we talked about the Fusion side of Grok2, which supports the Flux image generation from BFL, Black Forest Labs. Black Forest Labs is a company created by Robin Rombach and other folks from Stability AI. We talked about how, because Flux is open source, it now has support for all of the techniques and options and tricks that the open source community built on top of Stable Diffusion. For example, LoRa training and ControlNet to control the generation output and image to image. And now they're also now like up on different inference providers like FAL and Replicate. And how cool it is to put your own face into those models. And now it's like very possible with this frontier level diffusion image model. And we're very excited by this. And I also covered the Google Imagen 3 is now out of secret preview and looks very good as well. If you have a Google account, you can test this out. In this week's buzz category, super quick, I talked about how I used Weave, our LLM observability tooling, to super quickly evaluate how much cheaper Claude caching, or I guess prompt caching from Anthropic really is. And I did a video of this and I posted my code as well. So if you're into this and you want to see how to actually do this caching, how to evaluate, the code is there for you. And then we had breaking news right here on ThursdAI, even before the announcement went live. We talked with Emozilla, part of the co-founding team on Nous Research, which if you've been around with us, you know that we talk with it a lot. Nous Research is a fine-tuning team, one of the best around, and they dropped Hermes 3. Hermes 3 is 3 models, 405B, 70B, and 8B, which are fine-tunes, full fine-tunes, probably, according to Hugging Face, the first full fine-tune of Meta Llama 3.1 405 billion parameter. That's a lot to say. The first fine-tune of that, the full fine-tune. And we talked about a lot of what they did in there. It's quite incredible. Deep conversation with Emozilla. You're more than welcome to listen to this. The Hermes 3 provides open access to these models, including their custom built dataset that's trained on the base model, not the instruct model. It's highly steerable. It has role-playing capabilities. It's very interesting adherence to the system prompt. System prompt is king, and it also has incredible variety of specific tokens that you can provide for the model to behave like you want it to behave. And for all of us in the panel, it was very exciting to see how we could use this model like we couldn't use the 405B instruct version before, because Meta built in a bunch of refusals into that instruct version, and this model will actually behave like we want it to behave. So we're all excited and downloading this model right now. So we'll definitely cover this later. It achieves state-of-the-art performance on several of the benchmarks, and it's quite incredible given the fact that Meta spent a lot of money to instruct fine-tune V on their part. So we're very excited about this, and shout out to Emozilla and the Nous Research team announcing live on ThursdAI. So if you're listening live, you're getting the alpha right here on ThursdAI. And then in the open source, we also covered NVIDIA's attempts with Llama 3.1 Minitron to give us a new research into how to prune and distill models, where they took a new approach, which Nistan covered very well, and released a 4 billion parameter model of Llama 3.1 that achieves 80-ish or 85-ish or even 90-ish% of the 8 billion parameter one, with new techniques like with pruned, or depth pruned or width pruned. They tested multiple ones, including distilling as well. Very interesting for the fine-tuning community also to look at, and NVIDIA did this research as well. We covered as well that Falcon Mamba from TII released, which is a state space model based on the Mamba technology, and how we keep waiting for the transformer alternative models to release. This seems to be the state-of-the-art transformer alternative model, and it still doesn't compare to the state-of-the-art transformer models. It still shows the progress in that area, and we keep waiting for those models to improve. And I think lastly, I said that Runway, the Gen 3 video generation, image to video generation, now released a distilled version called Gen 3 Turbo, and it's now available for folks who are just on the free tier of Gen 3 Runway. So you can actually use this now without registering for an account. So now you can take something like Flux, put something like your face on it with the LoRa fine-tune, and then throw it in the best available, because Sora is not available yet, the best available image to video generator, Gen 3 Turbo, and just put your face on an image generation and then have a video out of it all within 25 minutes. What do you guys think? Yeah, let's go. Woo! You guys know the sound? This is the sound of ThursdAI. For many people who joined the live show, last live show, we had 4,000 people clock in. That's crazy, yo. That's crazy. 4,000 people like joined and re-listened to the show on X, and that's just on X, not even the podcast, not even the newsletter. That's a lot of people now listening to us, which is, I'm very humbled by it. So welcome everyone, especially the new folks, but especially everybody who comes back to ThursdAI, your weekly live highest signal AI news show, coming to you live on X. My name is Alex Volkov. I'm an AI evangelist with Weights and Biases, and I'm joined from week to week by a panel of co-hosts, dear friends of mine, experts in different fields, to talk about a lot of the stuff that the crazy world of AI has brought us this week, or basically every week. And we've been doing this live for the past year and a half, I want to say. And the podcast form, this became a podcast because many people told us basically, hey, we cannot join the live show. We still want to know what's up with AI. Why don't you record this? And I said, sure, no problem. I'm going to record this. And I'm going to call this ThursdAI. And I Sherlocked myself into releasing this the same day. So immediately after we record this on Thursday, I will also edit this into a podcast and also a newsletter, and we'll send it out. So if this is new for you, please register or subscribe, I guess, at thursdai.news or wherever you get your podcast. This does mean also, if you're listening live to the show, you don't have to be afraid to leave. Obviously stay with us. But if you can't, obviously we know people have work, it's Thursday. If you want to miss any part of the show and you're like, oh no, what did you talk about? Subscribe to the podcast. I want to say hi to my host super quick, and then we're going to dive into the news. Welcome Ryan, welcome Wolfram, welcome Nistan. Ryan, how you been?
Good. Excited for the show today. There's a lot to talk about.
There's a lot to talk about, and we're going to actually mix up. So we usually do the show when we start with open source. This week, we're going to talk about open source later in the show. We're going to start the show talking about big news from big companies and APIs. Wolfram, welcome back as well. How have you been? Have you had the chance to play with any of the new AIs that we got, or did you just come back?
Oh, I did play a bit, and Flux has been keeping me quite busy. That is an amazing image generation model.
Yes, we've covered Flux a couple of weeks ago. I guess we covered Flux as it came out, but since then, Flux has become the number one because it's open source, but also because it's everywhere. We're going to talk about Flux as well. I've been playing with it. I've been training it with different LoRa's myself. It's quite crazy. All right, folks, let's get started because we have a bunch of stuff to talk about, and we're going to get started with big companies, LLMs, and APIs, because tons of stuff to talk about there. How this week we basically got two new frontier models. We're going to get started with OpenAI, because OpenAI released some confusing things for us, and we definitely have to chat about this. So last week, just as the show happened, at the end of the show, OpenAI released a new ChatGPT version in the API. And then they released like a cryptic message while everybody was waiting for GPT-5, 6, 7, whatever. I don't know what people are waiting for. OpenAI quietly released like a cryptic message like, oh, by the way, we've been testing in the ChatGPT interface, not via the API, we've been testing a new model. So you may have seen changes, and we like it, and we think you will like it. Would not like they didn't tell us any stats, any evaluations, anything. And then a couple of days later, LMC Arena, where human beings test one output versus another output, announced that ChatGPT has reclaimed the number one position on the LMC Arena with ChatGPT-4o latest, which is not the version that they released in API that's also new. That's not that. So last week we talked about the ChatGPT version that has structured outputs, that supports structured outputs, that also is very good for coding. This is not that. This is a different one. Are you confused? So are we. And this is why we're here to talk about. So basically, there are now two different versions of ChatGPT. One of them is called ChatGPT-4o latest, and that came out at August 8th or 0808. And then there's another one, ChatGPT-0806. And that one is optimized for API usage, function calling, and instruction following. There's literally a tweet from Michelle Pokras, who works on the API, and she clarified, literally, this is the quote. ChatGPT-4o latest will track our 4o model in ChatGPT. This means the model that runs the interface in ChatGPT, and is chat-optimized model. Our model from last week, in quotes, in parentheses, GPT-4o 2024-0806, is optimized for API usage, function calling, instruction following. So we generally recommend that. This is the clarification tweet. So basically, if you're an AI developer and you care about stuff like we've talked about before, like structured output, for example, if you really want your model to reply with JSON, etc., you would go for the the API model, the 0806. If you want the model that many people voted to be the best one in Arena, you would go for the latest one. I'm hoping that's clear, but I want to see if I clarify this enough that my hosts here are following this. Wolfram, what do you think? Let me see if I explained this enough that you follow this.
I think you explained it, but I think the important thing is the ChatGPT model. When the name in the API is ChatGPT, then it is the one on the interface, and when it is just GPT-4o, then it is the API model. That is how I try to understand it.
Yep.
The ChatGPT is the website, and GPT-4o latest, and the others are API models.
That's an incredible distinction. I honestly didn't even look at this. I was like, okay, this is confusing. So ChatGPT-4o latest is tracking what ChatGPT has. Is that the first time that we're getting access to the model that they have on there? I think it is. They usually don't tell us.
Probably it was the same.
What the interface
it was
has.
The same before.
Yeah.
They probably didn't differentiate between chat and instruct, or what we can call it.
Yeah. Nisten, you've been using this for a while, because apparently the ChatGPT-4o latest, the one that's now number one in the leaderboard, that is the model that the LMC Arena has been running as anonymous-chatbot. And Nisten, I know you've been using this one and you've been very excited by this. You've given us a lot of code. Do you want to recap your experience with it? I know you've been using this for a minute.
Yes, so this was suspicion from last week, and I initially got very excited about it when I was posting, because it was giving pretty wild and interesting ideas, which you didn't normally think of. So the model is more chatty, and as far as I know, they haven't confirmed that it was anonymous chatbot, but they have not denied it either. So I figured they would have denied it by now, at least. for calling it out, but it looks like the answers you guys saw the answers were extremely close.
No, LMC's confirmed this
yeah.
in the LMC's release. The LMC's
LMC's okay.
gave
So
a full confirmation.
I called it last week in the chat. I rarely miss with these things. Okay, sometimes I do, but anyway, the model does have more creative ideas, and if you need that better conversation, or if you need something that involves writing to others, it is actually a better model. And for example, I want to use it. I was making translated synthetic medical conversations in different languages, and I was just manually testing them, and I saw that this model was like just giving out what felt like it was better content. I haven't evaluated it yet, but yeah, overall it is more chatty and stuff. But I'm also getting some other reports from people that when it comes to problem solving or chain of thought, they have some doubts, and that still needs to be evaluated. So right now, if you go on LMC's Arena and just go into battle mode, whenever you see anonymous chatbot, this was the new ChatGPT. But now you can also just use it in ChatGPT, like just make a new account. In the first couple of prompts, it will be that, and you can use it for free for the first couple of prompts, and then it will switch to GPT-4o mini. So.
Ryan, what's your experience with this?
I think we're seeing confusing communication from OpenAI, and it honestly feels like it's related to when Logan left. I feel my blunt opinion is if he was there, this kind of comms wouldn't have happened to devs, because I'm in Cursor right now and I'm choosing my model, and I tried the new Cursor Composer function, which is awesome, by the way.
Yeah, we talked about this last time, and it's incredible.
It's incredible. So I was using Sonnet 3.5. It cranked it out. I asked it to build a Flask app, and then I switched to 4o, and it botched a couple easy things. And so I'm like, okay, for sure, which model is this? I'm not totally sure. And then so I switched to 2024 08 06, and that appears to be a better. But the whole problem here is, like, as a dev, I'm not totally sure which model I should be using, and that's bad.
Yeah. It's quite confusing. I think, Wolfram, though, I think you gave me the best clarification that I was looking for. And honestly, thank you. This is what I was looking for. The thing that says ChatGPT is tracking the UI, and the thing that says GPT-4o is for the API developers like us, the instruction following. It is a different model. We've talked about this before. The one that does instruction following, the non-instruction following, the structured output. The last week's structured output model is also better for code. Everybody who already tried it said so as well. I just want to highlight, Nistan, before we get to you, I wanted to highlight that I posted a tweet of mine that said, after ChatGPT app posted that there's a new GPT-4o model in ChatGPT since last week. Hope you're all enjoying this, and check it out if you haven't. We think you'll like it. I posted, hey, there's a new model out. Some folks told me differences. Did you notice any? People told me that they noticed like a bunch of differences. Some said no, but many people said it feels different to them and feels like a little better in instruction following as well. So this kind of tracks what LMC's Arena feels like. Because we've talked about this multiple times. Arena can be gamed, because a lot of this is stylistic. Responses can be a little bit stylistic more, and it's not about logic or quality. We've talked about this multiple times. Maybe you guys want to recap, Nistan, if you want to recap this, or Wolfram, feel free. Or Ryan, like how does LMC's Arena, how can it be gamed even though the model on the logic generally is not necessarily better?
Yeah, I've always been saying that the intelligence of a model is different from how it is writing. So you can have some kind of charismatic model, if you will, that isn't the smartest, but it writes so well that you like it more. And that is probably more a popularity contest than an intelligence benchmark. Yeah. Which is important too, because you want a model that writes well. And if it's the smartest model, but it writes in a boring style, you may not want to use it for creative tasks, writing and stuff. But you have different use cases, so you always have to keep in mind what the benchmark is about, what is being measured, and how it is measured. Then you can pick the one that is appropriate to what you are looking for.
So definitely, we see those models play into the writing style. Go ahead, Nistan.
Look, the Arena is fine. I don't think there is so much like corruption within the Arena, because I notice how I vote myself on it, and often I'm barely even looking at the outputs for 3 or 4 questions, because I'm waiting for the right bot to show up. And sometimes I am, but I'm not always just taking it. And properly evaluating and checking over. It's just like, if this one looks right, or sometimes the other one doesn't respond at all or hits a rate limit. So yeah, the arena tends to favor models that sound better. So now that is a very useful metric in itself. It's just that you shouldn't, again, as a developer, like Ryan was saying, you shouldn't use that for exactly what your purpose is, for what you're going to use the model. And to clear up a bit the confusion, because on the API, there is GPT-4o, which is 0608, and that's the one that they slashed the prices with, and that's been around for some time.
That's the structured output one. Structured output. We talked about this last week.
Yeah. So the structured output one is good for code, but it's not the chattier one, like the one that gives you nicer conversations. That's 0808. So it starts to get confusing. And another interesting thing someone pointed out to me yesterday was that Azure had started adding benchmarks to the APIs of the model to use, and you can't run the benchmarks on your fine-tunes that you did of GPT-4, and people were wondering why. The benchmarks are there just like for your CI/CD, continuous integration, continuous delivery environments, because they're just changing the models so many times that they had to add a benchmarks for their own models so that you could keep track of if these changes happen. Yeah, this is just going to put a lot more work into devs to, I got to have some kind of automated system to keep track of what exactly changed. What is like the vibe score? Is it like, does it have more emojis? Is it better to reply to clients with? What's the coding score? What's the agent score? This is still a lot of work to do. And it is pretty annoying that they change so often, but at the end of the day, it is what it is.
I will say, I'm not annoyed that we're getting better models. Just to be clear, I'm annoyed at the confusing kind of communication. I'm also annoyed a little bit, but just like a tiny bit, that what they say when they updated this is this thing. I'm literally reading from the model release notes that was released August 12, so 3 days ago, in quotes, bug fixes and performance improvements. This thing where like you get an update on iOS or Android, and what they have in release notes is literally bug fixes and performance improvements. And from like major versions, that's all you have in release notes. That's what they quoted. And they said, we'll introduce an update to GPT-4o that we found through experiment results and qualitative feedback ChatGPT users tend to prefer. Because they're running experiments. LMC Arena obviously runs experiments, but they're running a bunch of experiments. They have 100 million users use ChatGPT all the time. They have it for free. They run a bunch of experiments. They do A/B test, ABC testing. They say it's not a new frontier class model, winking at some fruit-faced people in the audience. It's not a new frontier class model. Although we'd like to tell you exactly how the model responses are different, figuring out how granularly benchmark and communicate model behavior improvements is an ongoing area of research in itself, in parentheses, which we're working on. Sometimes we can point to new capabilities and specific improvements, and we'll try our best to communicate. But sometimes we can't, and we'll continue to keep you posted as best as we can. So basically they're saying, hey, we updated, it seems to work better. Many people seem to prefer this. We don't know why. This is literally the communication from OpenAI about this new ChatGPT latest model. An additional thing, listen to what you just said, is that for API models like the GPT-4o 2024-08-06, that's a date pinned model. So if you use that as a developer, that's why they recommend this in API. This is the exact model you'll keep getting. This is what's called the pinned model to a date specifically. ChatGPT-4o latest is not a pinned model. This will track whatever they have in ChatGPT. So once they change whatever they have, if you're using this latest thing, it will also keep changing. That's what they're basically saying. So I guess for clarification for developers, if you're using a pinned model with a date in the actual model name, that's going to be GPT-4o 2024-08-06. If you're using ChatGPT latest, you will get whatever the latest is in there. Hopefully we've clarified this a little bit, and we need to move on. Ryan, last thing, and we'll move on because we have a better thing to talk about.
So how is LMSys protecting against vote stuffing? Because ChatGPT-4o latest, the 0808 model, got 11,555 votes. You'd only need about 500 coordinated votes to shift that by 5%. And there's got to be 500 people that like this model that are willing to vote for it. It's obviously immoral, but how are they protecting against that?
You can't tell because in the beginning it's only in battle mode, and it has to. You actually have to guess which is A and B. So unless someone's doing an exploit on the site, which is a possibility, then I don't know. But they do have a default protection in there that.
But don't the engineers know when they put a new model in and probably know what it's called?
Yes, it's just that's their responsibility. We are trusting LMSys with this, and I think they've done a pretty good job. But as far as voting goes, in battle mode, you get two bots, and you don't know which is which, so you have to actually guess correctly.
Fair. Just want to bring that up.
All right, folks, I want to welcome Anthropi real quick. Anthropi, comment on what we have.
Yeah, I think LMSys has had vote stuffing problems before. So we noted earlier on that they split languages because they were getting a lot of French and Chinese input. And it wasn't very clear whether it was vote stuffing or whether it was fair play because you actually had users who were asking questions in Chinese and in French, and they were selecting models which had better Chinese and French responses. It could be noted that could be fair play. I think me and Krishnan Rohit did a bunch of work on trying to figure out what would actually happen. And I think the outcome of that is that at the end of the day, personalized models, which are suitable for your specific niche vertical, are what is going to work best for you. And LMSys is at best whatever you can work with.
Yeah, thanks. I will say just this one thing. Overall, on LMSys Arena is probably fine-tuned for style. LMSys has also the breakdown categories. Thank you, Anthropi, for pointing this out. The categories that they have there's multiple categories. There's math, coding, hard prompts, which is more different conversations. There's also multi-turn. This new model is now number one in multi-turn conversation, number one in longer query as well, number one in instruction following, and number one in hard prompts, and number one in coding. Even in split by categories, this new model, this ChatGPT new model is number one in all of those. So this is not necessarily just stylistic. There's like a bunch of other things that they are testing for. This new model is now number one. And I will say also, like, by quite a large margin, Gemini 1.5 Pro has been up there for a week. If you guys remember last week, we've talked about, hey, Gemini 1.5, Google is back for the first time. Google is like the top dog LMSys Arena with 1300 ELO score. They've been there for exactly a week. And then now ChatGPT-4o latest is up there with 1314. So 1314. Right, folks. Congrats to ChatGPT and OpenAI for this. This is not the news that folks were hoping for, but for many people, this is like way more than enough. And whether or not this is enough for folks to actually go and pay for their ChatGPT $20 back, I don't know. Maybe. I quite like it. I use ChatGPT, even though it screwed me up yesterday, and I will tell you how it screwed me up in this next thing that we'll talk about. Now let's talk about XAI. Let's talk about XAI, folks. We've been using Grok with a Q, but Grok with a K, we've used once or twice, and then we stopped using this because the novelty passed and it couldn't do anything. Then, if you guys remember, at some point, I actually rolled back a feature of theirs, and Igor Babushkin, the co-founder of Grok of XAI, kind of said, oops, we're sorry, because I found it completely unhinged. They rolled out the feature of explain this tweet or something, and then it was just like very bad. Anyway, and now Grok2 was released, and wow. Right? Like I did not expect. I expected, like, Elon is building like a mega cluster. We've talked about this in Memphis. He's spending like a lot of money. He's basically going all in to build the best like foundational model. But listening to Elon is really hard because like he can exaggerate, but this wasn't an exaggeration. Grok2 comes close to GPT-4 in some points, beat GPT-4o. Previous GPT-4o, it's always a problem comparing to GPT-4o, right? If you look at evaluations, Grok2 compares to GPT-4o and beats it. And then in little tiny notes, they say that GPT-4 Turbo and GPT-4o scores are from May 2024 release. This is what they compare themselves to. May 2024 was 4 or 5 months ago. How many new releases from GPT-4o there have been since then? 7? I don't know. We don't know. But this comparison obviously is flawed. So saying that Grok2 is at the level of GPT-4o, back in May it was. Right now it isn't. So that's the problem with a fast-moving space as this. Still though, Grok2 Mini and Grok2 are the two new models that we get. I'm assuming the Grok2 Mini is a distilled model of Grok. That's what everybody now does. GPT-4o and GPT-4o Mini, Claude Opus and Claude Haiku, for example, and obviously Gemini and Gemini Flash. It looks like everybody's doing the same thing. They're training a big model and then they distill to a smaller, faster, cheaper model. So what do we have? We have Grok2 as a LLM, and we also have Grok2 Mini. Grok2 gets an quite crazy 87.5% on MMLU and 75.5% on MMLU Pro. Just for comparison, again, the numbers that they claim are previous, but MMLU Pro, Gemini 1.5 gets 69, Grok 2 gets 75. So this Grok is actually like a frontier model. No longer Grok is high, Elon trained something. No, we get a frontier model at Grok. This is Grok 2. This is like quite a new thing. Math Vista is pretty decent, like 69 as well, like pretty decent as well. Human Eval at 88%, so like this model can code, like pretty much close to Llama 4 or 5 billion parameters as well. However, this is not the biggest thing about Grok 2. The biggest thing I think about Grok 2, and we've talked about this multiple times as well, is one, it's uncensored as hell. Unlike GPT-4, Nisa, why are you sending me alerts? What's going on?
Pharrell sent this.
ChatGPT is down?
The website of ChatGPT is being updated. Yeah, it says bad gateway. So that means it's just being replaced completely. Yeah.
Yeah,
there's something coming up.
We'll wait and see.
Yeah, let's keep going.
Yeah, is this like Apple when Apple announces something goes down? I don't know. The app on ChatGPT still works. I tested this, so the service is still there. But maybe folks in the audience, let us know and keep refreshing the ChatGPT website if something new comes up.
Yeah, the web app's down.
Web app's down. So keep going. Grok 2, I think personally, we'll talk about this in a second. The biggest things that they have the moat, besides Elon being like absolutely batshit insane and like spending like billions of dollars, they raised $6 billion. That not an evaluation. That's the money that they raised in a round. They're spending all of this on a GPU, building like super clusters, whatever. They have the training data from X. So all of the models we know up until a certain point were trained on all of X, right? Because they all scraped it. At some point, Elon came and put a paywall in front of all of this. So people stopped training on the real-time data. Not only that, Grok has real-time access on X. So not the actual model, but the product that we have in X, like on Twitter, that has access to real-time information. So you can actually ask it about stuff that are happening today. No other models have this. So ChatGPT has access through Bing and via search, Gemini obviously through Google search, etc. I actually don't know Anthropic, what they have in terms of real-time, if at all. Grok has access to X and can look up real-time information. So I'm assuming if you ask Grok right now what we're talking about, it will know. I personally think it's a great mode. But the huge thing is that Space Uncle does not give a crap about any censorship. If you ask ChatGPT about any type of politics, we talked about this before, ChatGPT will tell you like, no, I don't want to talk about this. The type of stuff that Grok answers, is going to be challenged in many courts, and Uncle has a lot of money to pay lawyers to protect this. And so I think that this is like a new thing that we're about to see how this is going to play out. Because I personally think we need this. Personally, that's my personal opinion. I'm not landing on any side of this. That's my personal opinion. I think that we need to see how this plays out, how nothing, honestly, will happen if an uncensored, truth-seeking AI, that's what they call this, will actually be in the hands of people. That, by the way, costs $8 a month. So that's another thing. ChatGPT costs $20, Claude $20, Gemini Pro I think costs $20 as well. Uncle is undercutting this with $8 a month for the X Premium membership. The folks will get a frontier level model for $8 a month that includes a Mid-Journey level image generation, which is a whole separate thing. So I'll pause here, and I want to feel reactions from folks. Folks, go ahead, Ryan, please. Have you used Grok 2? What's your reaction? Before we get to the Flux thing, before we get to the image generation, because we can talk about that one for like at least 10 minutes.
Yeah, it's jarring to really use an uncensored model. I'm with you, and I don't want to come too hard down on either side here, but I think you should have freedom here to talk what you want to talk about with the model. But it is jarring. And then you immediately go to the Flux generation, and that's even more jarring because you're seeing visual stuff that honestly made me feel a little uncomfortable. Yeah, we're in a whole new world. It's pretty wild.
Yep. Uncomfortable is definitely the word here. Matt, welcome, Matt. Have you used the Grok2 yet?
Hey, thanks for having me. Yeah, I have a little bit, not too much, but enough to see what you're talking about, where it just will do anything. You can say, how do I build a bomb? And it will answer. So it's quite interesting.
Yeah. And the interesting thing to me is that, okay, Grok before had two modes as well. He had the regular mode and had the fun mode as well. And it was like, haha, Uncle Elon, and he thinks he's funny thing, and they trained it on like the most like dad jokes, whatever. But this model can code. Like this has like human eval score of 87. This model can output like legit code in addition to being uncensored. We're actually getting a frontier model for this price that's also uncensored. So that's very interesting. Thoughts about this, Nistan?
So I used the sus command R quite a bit from LM
Wait, tell folks what this means, because I don't know if folks follow the full lore. This is...
So the Strawberry account started trolling that the sus command R model is like a very small 8V version of OpenAI's. It turns out that was not true. It turns out sus command R was the new Grok, was from XAI. And so, because I was using it, I was trying it out. It was good, but the output was a little bit like, there were other ones that were like somewhat better, but it was good. It's not like you're going to be missing a whole lot, but it was just like slow. So it felt like this was a very large model just answering in brief. Yeah, while XAI is getting close now, I think this is a huge model. And Uncle E finally has all the GPUs to host it for everyone. But I think this is a pretty big model. You can't really tell what architecture and stuff it is, but you can guess if it has, or as Yam says, that big model smell. And it's just the way it's a little bit slow, and the way that it digests in a lot of information you dump in at once and takes all of that into the account. Usually you need more parameters for that. But not always, that has changed, but so you can use it for free if you don't have X Premium, which like I don't pay for it. You can just use it for free on LM6 Arena. If you just go to direct chat mode and you choose sus column R, you can use that's the new Grok.
Yeah,
you can try it out.
Column R, by the way, is a reference to one book or something that Grok is from. I saw somebody talk about this somewhere. Obviously it is, because that's how those people roll. But I really want to say shout out to the folks at X, because this lab wasn't around a year ago, and now they have a frontier model. And you know how Uncle rolls. Like Uncle announces, hey, we're going to have a frontier model in 6 weeks. And they find out about it from a tweet before he actually sends the email. And then they sit in the room, it's like, oh shit, we need a frontier model by end of this quarter. So that's how people usually find out about stuff that happened over there. Wolfram, have you had a chance to chat with this model? What's your take? I know that you like test a lot of models. I know that you test uncensored models as well. Some folks at Local Llama definitely like Moistral, for example. I heard there's a Moistral uncensored model. What's your take on the uncensored part of this?
There are a lot of uncensored models, and I'm using some prompts and characters with my AI, even in Perplexity and others. So my AI is always uncensored, so that is not a big thing for me.
That's true.
But the big thing is that one of the big services is doing it, and big kudos to Elon for doing that, because I think the world has shifted to a place where you are told what you can say and can't say, and by extension, what you can think and not think. And I think the pendulum is swinging back in the other direction now, which we are seeing with a lot of things. Everybody tried to censor, and thought police was active. And I think people are now fighting back against this. And with someone with the energy and the capital that Elon has, that is, he's championing it. And I'm a big fan of that, because the world needs to chill out a bit. Live and let live is my motto. I'm great. I'm happy about that. The model itself, I couldn't use it because it's not available in my region, and I didn't use a VPN to access it yet. But I do hope he does another open source release, or at least open whites, which the previous version, he brought it out. It was great that he did it, but I don't think anyone was using it. So Would be cool if he did another one.
That's also true. That's a great point, because we did see the previous Grok, I think it was Grok 1.5, get open sourced, and then literally nobody used it. Like we talked about this. Hey, thank you for open sourcing Excel. I don't think I even downloaded this back then, but they did open source it, or at least they released it in open weights. And so there is that tendency. Hopefully they will open weights this one once number 3 comes out. And Uncle does talk about number 3 being the best model once they release this end of this year. That's what they are talking about, end of this year. We don't know. All right, folks, we talked about enough about this frontier model being uncensored. Wolfram, like you said, you always talk with uncensored models, but those are jailbroken or fine-tuned open source models. Like you're saying, this is a frontier level model served inference-wise for everyone that is now fairly uncensored. Let's talk about the fact that now it also generates images and uses Flux. Flux from Black Forest Labs, Stability folks, Robin Rombach, and a bunch of other folks, I think like 13 Stability people, the best of the best, as Imad Mustak called them, from Stability, opened this new foundational image generation lab, Black Forest Labs, and released, 3 models, Flux Pro, Flux Snail, and Flux Dev. And there were speculations that Grok will release with Midjourney. They probably talked with Midjourney. And Uncle said that they are working on an image model of their own. But meanwhile, they announced a partnership with Flux, which probably boosted Flux like crazy, because everybody now knows who Flux is. Many people don't know. Many people right now, if you go and look up Grok images, many people say, wow, Grok generates these images like crazy. Many people don't even know that this is a different model that they just like source via API. However, they don't censor anything. There's a lot of stuff that you can generate. You can generate political stuff. You can generate people. If you ask ChatGPT and DALL-E generate people, it will say no. You can play around with tricks. This can generate, there's so many images of political stuff like Trump and whatever, kissing Kamala on the cheek. That's the very censored stuff. You can do way more. I've seen some stuff. We're recording, so I'm not going to repeat some of the stuff that I've seen, but I've seen some stuff. So folks on stage, have you played with the image generation of Grok compared to, let's say, Midjourney or whatever? What's your take? And by the way, folks in the audience who I know, who are mutual with, who play with image generation a lot, Amoeba GPT, I'm looking at you and some other folks, feel free to welcome to come up and also talk to me about Flux and image generation. But have you guys played with generating some images, and what you think about the fact that uncensored image generation is here in addition to a frontier model as well? I will point fingers if nobody raises a hand. Let's see. Nissan, go ahead.
So I saw some things in the private group chats that were pretty out there, but they weren't fully uncensored. There is still some level of
there's no nudity. I haven't seen nudity full on.
Yeah, or like gore.
Gore, I haven't seen. There's no blood. I haven't seen blood.
That. Yeah. There was some, but it wasn't like bad. So I think they did a pretty good job of balancing out, like keeping some level of decency and also balancing out the requirements of fully uncensored from Uncle Elon.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I've seen some pretty funny, pretty out there things, and I just find it that at the end of the day, we're all like kids inside. That all the adults were saying, "Hey, we have an election. We don't want people to start making political caricatures and start generating deep fakes of politicians." And then Uncle Elon just goes, $6 billion. Have at it.
Yeah.
2 months before the election.
Here's a state-of-the-art diffusion model that looks as real as possibly be for free for you, or like $8 a month for you. Go nuts, kids. Yes.
To have guns, put guns on them, and anime cats, and whatever you want. It's just.
Oh yeah, one thing, if you guys haven't had the chance to look at some of these images, one thing that this model does not care about is copyright at all. This could generate images of Disney characters mixed with Mario and other Nintendo characters. It does not care about, it can generate logos. It's pretty good at text as well. Welcome, Amoeba GPT. This is the first time on stage. However, folks who follow ThursdAI probably know your work because you did a lot of comparisons, a lot of great analysis. So welcome, very happy that you're here. What's your take on some of the Flux generations that are like uncensored?
Actually, I don't have much to say on the uncensored stuff because I actually haven't used it in Grok, but I do have some experience testing out for more production use cases, some of their smaller models.
Of Flux, you mean?
So, yeah, they've got the Schnell model,
Mm-hmm.
which is open source and it's a distilled version. And we've been using it via AI platform. And it's been really a game changer for us because we're testing out one use case, which I can't really talk about yet, but it is like an image generation use case. And we're really about to kill it. And we're literally in a meeting discussing whether we should kill it or not. And then this model came out and we tested it and actually changed the project completely. So two things are great about it. One is it generates images within half a second. And another, it costs, at least on the FAL platform, it says on that you can generate 333 images for $1. Which is also a game changer for us. But yeah, these models been really impressive.
Yeah, so we have a corner that we talk usually about diffusion models that's separate, but now like it feels like it's the same. So I will say shout out to FAL, their friends. They're not paying for any of this. I really like their service. And not only do they have an ability for you to play with the model, so you don't have to go to Uncle Elon's like free thing. You can go to FAL, they'll give you like $5 for registering. You can add some stuff. What you can do with Flux that I wanted to cover that you still cannot do via Grok is that you can personalize this. You can train LoRa's, and I just pinned a tweet of mine on top that you can see that I just like uploaded 5 or 6 images of my face and trained the LoRa on my face. And this is not actually the best train. They since improved it like multiple times, and you can generate multiple things that look like you with this. They have image to image now. They have ControlNet. If you know what ControlNet is, we've talked about ControlNet. Flux now is basically the top. If you remember Stable Diffusion before, Flux replaced this completely. People don't remember what Stable Diffusion is. Flux, not only is it now productionized in Grok, it's now as well the best model, I think, because it's open source, so you can do stuff like ControlNet, you can do stuff like personalized LoRa, you can do Dreambooth from our friends. You can do a bunch of stuff. And FAL is the place. You can also do it on Replicate. Shout out to Replicate, also friends. But FAL for me is the place where I go to test all this stuff. So Amoeba GPT, thank you for shouting them out. Folks, last things on Grok. Oh yeah, Matt, I want to talk to you about their API because they're about to release an API from Grok. I don't know if you saw this, but that's also like an interesting play in the field of APIs, right? Like providers. I haven't like even had a chance to realize this.
Yeah, do you know what the pricing looks like? I haven't seen it.
No, there's no pricing. They just announced that there will be an API, but I'm assuming that Uncle is going to undercut on pricing. He's going to try, right?
Probably. Yeah. I'm very excited to try it, especially if it is as good as it seems. And if you undercut some pricing, that could be a very interesting thing for a lot of products. I'm more excited to see what the next model looks like, right? If this model is this good with less than a year of work, the trajectory they're on, it seems like they will be far above this very soon. That is quite exciting. And also if they release a and that's what I would call this, like a semi-uncensored model and API, like you still want some things obviously censored, but most things it allows now.
Yeah.
I wonder what that'll do to the other labs, right? Will that force their hand, or is it still going to be lip service and saying, hey, we need this, but if there's something else available that has the ability to do these things that others won't, will they change? So I'm very excited to see how it shakes up the landscape. I do want to caveat by saying I still think some censoring is a good thing. I think we can all agree on that. I think it's just the line is far too close to full-on censoring right now, and we want to find the perfect balance.
Yep, I agree. I got to wonder about this API. I did ask somebody from XAI, and they did clarify that the real-timeness of the model, so there's the model and there's the product, right? The model is the LLM that they've trained. The product is the Grok inside XAI. The product is connected to X and can look up real-time information. The model cannot. The model uses this tool like it uses the Flux tool. The API will not give you real-time information. I've asked, and they clarified this. So the API, unless they change their mind and they will connect this, somebody said, I like how you refer to him as Uncle. That's Nistan. Somebody commented this. That's Nistan's nomenclature, and I kind of like it. Space Uncle. The API will not include real-time information from X unless they turn it on, but because the LLM doesn't actually have this. So it's going to be interesting how this shakes kind of the landscape, because right now we have Claude, we have obviously Mistral, we have OpenAI, we have all of these folks, and now we're going to have Grok. It's getting crowded up there at the top of the LLMs. So somebody needs to come and shake things up so people will try to follow like super quick. And people say it's going to be maybe ChatGPT-4o. We'll see. Is this it on Grok2? I think this is it. Yeah, last chance to comment on Grok2 if you have any thoughts that we haven't covered yet? And if not, we're going to move on because we have to talk about Claude and the crazy thing that they released this week.
Yeah, look, I think that just in general, popping in at the end of the discussion, I think that it's going to be a trend, in my opinion, the more uncensored models, not just for, you can say, non-traditional use cases, but also it's just the whole aspect of language models refusing to do things that you ask them or being insincere or unhonest, where pretty much every person just knows just can recognize like LLMs being dishonest with you. I think that it's going to be a trend, and it's just a matter of time until many models will follow, just because it's more usable and many people just, in my opinion, just no one likes models refusing to them. And just like you don't, for example, blame the car manufacturer that cars can go beyond the speed limit. Technically, it is possible. You blame the driver that used the car to break the law. So I think that this is the way we should treat LLMs. And if you are using them to do bad things, it's on you. It's not on the manufacturer. And that's it. That's the way I see it. I think it's going to be a trend, and I think it's great that we are going there. And I don't know, crazy week like every single week in AI. Yeah,
absolutely. So we have two more big company news. Thank you. We have two more big company news. Matt and Nistan, please help me cover this next one. We've talked about this last week. So moving forward, now we're turning our sights into Anthropic, because while people wait for bigger models, different things, there are other ways to improve your offering and increase your moat. Or I guess this is not a moat if everybody does this, but increase your offering and keep developers with you. Anthropic released some such thing this week, basically yesterday. Anthropic announces prompt caching, a new offering from their API, which essentially lets you, the developer, decide that some of the long context cache that you have, to ask them to, long context window that you have, you ask Anthropic to cache it. What does this mean? This means essentially that like they will keep this warm in some sense. We're not going to get into details how, because we honestly don't know. They can do it in one of different ways. And then when you keep sending the same long context, they will get it from cache instead of trying to reprocess everything as well. And what this effectively do for you is that it will be faster and way cheaper. I said way because it's literally 90% cheaper. So writing to this cache costs a little bit more, just like 25% more. But reading from this cache is 90% cheaper. 90% cheaper. So to give you like an example, like Grok 3.5 Sonnet, even though a bunch of stuff changed for the past weeks, we still think that 3.5 Sonnet is like a very good model, correct? Like folks give me thumbs up, thumbs down, but I think that 3.5 Sonnet, despite the changes in LMC's arena, whatever, we like this model. Like we like 3.5 Sonnet. It's dope for code and everything in Cursor. Right now, the general cost of it is $3 for a million tokens. If you use cache, it costs you to write into this cache 3.75, but to read from this cache, it costs 30 cents. So like 90% cheaper. That's ridiculous. Why is it ridiculous? Because it's also way faster. It's like 25 or to 45% faster. Why is it ridiculous? Because we've talked about this before a little bit as well. Long context and all Claude models have 200,000 tokens in their context window, up to 200,000 tokens in the context window. Long context versus, let's say, something like RAG for developers. People pit them together, and the things that people say, RAG has faster speed because you do like less context, etc. RAG is also cheaper because you send less context, less tokens back and forth. Now this basically solves those two issues. There's still the issue of whether or not the model can attend to all this long context, whether its capability to think through this long context works or not. But I think that this is ridiculous. In fact, yesterday I did an analysis, and I will post this on the top, but some of you who follow me already probably saw this. I did a very excited analysis, and I maybe got overexcited. I did an analysis, and I compared the two kind of models, one cached and one uncached, for Sonnet and for Haiku. Not 3.5 Haiku. We didn't get 3.5, just the previous Haiku. By the way, pricing on Haiku is already ridiculous. The base price on Haiku is 25 cents per million tokens. With cash, it's 3 cents per million tokens. I will slowly repeat this. I need like this. I don't know how else do I highlight what I'm saying right now to you guys. Haiku, a model that 2-3 months ago we all was like, wow, this is incredible. It costs 3 cents to send 3 cents to send million tokens of input in there. 3 cents. It's nothing. It's free. It's basically free. This intelligence that's decent, that was like top of the line intelligence 2-3 months ago, is right now basically free because 3 cents is nothing for a million tokens. You literally, and we've talked about this last week, you literally can record everything you say your whole day, plus everything you hear your whole day, send it to this model. At the end of the day, you'll have like $1. So I'm super excited by this. Obviously, you can hear Matt. We've talked about caching last week. This was in DeepSeek's example. This is now a frontier lab giving us caching, although Google did as well. I would love to hear your thoughts about this and whether or not you're excited as I on this topic.
Yeah, very excited. So I know we were talking about and predicting this last week, so very cool to see it come to pass so quickly. I'm already personally using it and using it quite a bit. There's actually a workflow that I'm running as we speak that originally was costing about $20-ish per run and taking quite a bit of time. And it's sped it up quite a bit, not insanely, but a little bit faster. But the cost, it's gone down from $20 to $2 to $3 per run, which is
crazy,
amazing, right? And it almost brings, you can think of it like this. It almost brings, and it's not exactly this, it brings Sonnet down to Haiku cost, which is a huge jump. And it brings Haiku down to, like you said, absolutely nothing.
To free, yeah.
Like there are so many businesses that can be built. So don't underestimate the power of the pricing here. With the model being available, it doesn't mean you can build every business you want to build, every use case you want to build. There's still sort of fundamental business constraints around cost. For example, that idea of putting everything in your life into something that might get pretty expensive if you're doing that every day. But with this, we now get the quality, the speed, and now a price that actually makes new use cases possible. You can even imagine using that same sort of context of data or that cache of data and running many more sort of iterations over the same prompt to make it much, much better, to get better outputs, right? Instead of just going and doing a single pass. We talked about this in the past with things like Grok, as in the LPUs, not as in the model. When you have cheaper, faster models, you can do more permutations and iterations over an output before actually sending it to the user, making it far better than it would be otherwise for a lower cost. So I'm pretty excited about it. You can imagine showing it your entire code base and asking for, like I said, like yesterday, new features. Or instead of just doing like RAG and throwing the top 5 docs in, throw in the top 1,000 always, or all your docs always, and then just rag in the top 5 to show at the very bottom to get the model to condition on those, right? The thing that I'm most excited about, and we've talked about in the past as well, is showing the model hundreds of examples of your task, right? We've done sort of internal, not fully studies, but a lot of testing on this. And we found that you can fine tune a model on millions of data points, or you can show Sonnet, let's say 100, 200 examples of that same task, and you'll get better results with Sonnet. And now it's far cheaper. There's no fine tuning that needs to be done. We're really moving along the chain from fine tuning is the only way to do certain things to now it's becoming possible, not just technically, but also cost-wise and constraint-wise, to do the same sort of thing with just prompting, which is very exciting. So,
very exciting.
Yeah.
And cost-effective, man. Specifically, I wanted to highlight what Matt just said about fine-tuning, but in a different way. Yeah, I saw you react as well. I want to hear you on this topic. Let's talk about this. This is not SFT fine-tuning. This is different.
All right, I got a lot to say.
Let's go.
Which Twitter timeline you heard about caching gonna be a very big thing in the future? First, not gonna point fingers, but there is a timeline that you can find it. Anyway, caching is gonna be much larger. It starts now, and it's a big thing, absolutely. But I see it even going further. The way I see caching in the probably very near future, because probably the frontier labs are working on this feature, you can embed things like, in general, embed a data set or a large collection of documents into the KV cache. Technically, I'm saying a technical term, but you can do this. And what it gives you is basically just the same thing that caching now with Anthropic gives you, but at a much larger scale. What is this for? What do I see this for? What I think is going to happen is that you're going to have features that allow you to embed full documents or full data sets into the cache beforehand, and then simply use it the way you use RAG today, just with very long context. and it will be great. And I think many people just don't see this coming, and I think it should be pointed out that caching is going to be a huge thing. And I absolutely agree with the fine tuning and few shot showing examples to the model. It is an extremely powerful prompting technique. If you don't know this, it is, by the way, much better than trying to explain to the model what to do. Just so showing it a couple of examples of how to solve a task.
Or a couple of thousand examples.
Yeah, for sure. Look, you can scale this as much as you want, but I'm saying if you haven't tried, just try two. Just try two examples. Just see for yourself, because there are many tiny details that are very hard to explain and easy to overlook when you try to explain them. But if you just show solved examples, like 2, 3, sometimes it's enough. You will see a huge jump, and you should try it. And yeah, when the model itself is very large and very powerful in general, it also becomes not that easy to fine tune a smaller model to match it, even if you just go a few short promptings. It's a great thing, and I see caching as a huge thing coming in the near future. That's it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, so there's like a few things that this could be head to head against. First of all, fine-tuning is not easy for many people. Fine-tuning requires like data set. This also requires data set, but fine-tuning requires like specific knowledge. It's getting easier and easier, like drag and drop in Google AI Studio, for example. ChatGPT as well is drag and drop. But still, fine-tuning requires some specific knowledge that many people on the stage have, and many other people who will join soon also have. But fine-tuning is great for like specific tasks, for examples, or you have to have a lot of knowledge to do better model with general fine-tuning. It's really hard to compete with Llama Instruct, because they did a very good job in fine-tuning Llama 3.1. There's also RAG. RAG, but for folks who are listening to this, what is RAG? Just like a super quick update. Developers will put a bunch of information into a vector database, embed this, just so the model will be able to do what's called a retrieval, what is it called? Semantic search. So that concepts that are similar to each other, the model will be able to go and say, okay, the user wants this in a unstructured language. We have this information. What is the most similar chunk to this information? Everybody talks about RAG in enterprise. The fact is, nobody knows how to chunk it properly. Chunking is a hard problem to solve. If you have a lot of text, nobody actually knows how to break down this text in a way that makes sense for the semantic search to like work properly. Like, it's a big problem in this world of RAG, but everybody talks about RAG because it's a keyword thing. But it also requires work. It requires you to go and find the semantic database. It requires you to set it up. It requires you to keep updating this. It's a lot of work. This is easy. Sending everything you have is easy. You don't have to update anything. You just send it. And now, because of this long context caching, it's also now cheaper and quite faster as well. This is now long context versus these two things. With caching, it actually makes financial sense. Yam, let's think about this, and we're going to move on because we have still a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, sure. I just want to point out what you're saying is true. The only thing, the problem with RAG is that it's hard. It doesn't matter how, it's just hard. People think that it is one silver bullet solution that solves everything. It's just hard to get right. And you can see this on much smaller case. I think a year ago, it was a craze of chat with PDFs. Everyone was building a chat with PDF thing. But today we don't even talk about it because everyone is already chatting with PDFs, because we all have long context with Claude and ChatGPT. We just throw the PDFs in it and it just works pretty well. I think this is the way it's going to go forward. RAG is here to stay, but for different type of use cases, in my opinion, or for explainability and so on, because it's very easy to explain what the sources are. So it's never going to go away. It has a very real use case for this. But I think long context and much longer context and caching is going to be huge for exactly what people are trying to optimize RAG today, because it's hard. That's it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm super excited about prompt caching, as you guys can see from the video that I added here. Nista, I want to hear your thoughts about this before we move on, because I know we talked about this.
Yeah, just like really quick technical breakdown what happens, because you'll start hearing a lot of these terms getting more corporatized. But at the end of the day, the context size is you're talking to the model, and what's happening is between the layers, there is a hidden state being passed around. This is not the exact technical conversation, but like it's all you really need to know. And the bigger this hidden state gets, it takes up way more space, and you need way more memory to pass it around. And this hidden state is the context. So what's happening when you hear these caching stuff now is just people are saving that to a file. And you could do this with Llama CPP for over a year, and Google Gemini rolled it out a few months ago. And with Sonnet is very useful because this allows you to have very long prompts. So you can make your prompt extremely long. So you should change all your prompts now, all your API calls, and add a whole bunch of examples, and always leave this on. Unless you have like very tiny prompts that you set in the API, you should always leave this on. Leave on the caching. Because, for example, now you could put like 100,000 tokens on your prompt and only get like a little bit back, and you'll only pay for it like once in the beginning. This is the way to use it. Yeah.
I want to contextualize for folks 100,000 tokens. We always talk about like the sizes and everything. Contextualizing 100,000 tokens. In the video above, the evaluation that I did, 100,000 tokens amounted to transcriptions of 5 2-hour spaces that were recorded on ThursdAI. 5 2-hour spaces, right? That's 100,000 tokens. We talked for basically 10 hours. 10 hours of conversation amounted to 100,000 tokens, or I think 110 or something like this. That's a lot. That's a lot of text that you can shove in there. There's like books, more than books size, that you can just continuously have questions, and it's going to cost you cents, less than cents if you're using Haiku, and like less than this, a little bit more if you're using Claude 3.5 Sonnet. All right, folks, I think we've geeked out about Claude 3.5. We're moving on to cover the last thing with Google. Google also released something in their Made with Google event. I just want to shout out to the folks at OpenAI who scheduled their releases in blog posts and everything just in time, just randomly coincide with the time that Google has their events. Whoever decides on this in OpenAI, they know what they're doing, and we know that it's on purpose. We know because last Google I/O, a day before, they released their like advanced voice mode, and this week the same exact thing happened. They announced that OpenAI's new ChatGPT is now #1 again, the same day that Made by Google event happened. In the Made by Google event, they announced like a bunch of new Android phones, Android 9, I believe. Sorry, folks, I did not do a good job preparing for this. Android 9, yes, thank you. However, they didn't announce a bunch of AI stuff. And one thing they did announce that's live for everyone is Gemini Live. Gemini Live is the ability for you to talk and have long conversations, including ability to interrupt a voice conversation with Gemini. It's not quite the same as the GPT-4o Advanced or Omni mode, because this is still Gemini transcribing whatever you say into text and then reacting and then have a trigger point. So it's not like the latency is not quite there. So that's still not the same quality of what we're expecting from advanced voice mode. That would be Project Astra that Google announced in their Google I/O back in whatever May it was. But still, Google, compared to, let's say, Apple, now productized in all of their Android phones right now, something called Gemini Live. Not only that, they also introduced a new hardware feature, Gemini Buds or Pixel Buds Pro, and they also have Gemini Live. So you can put up a phone, like an earbud now, and walk around and just talk with AI with their Gemini Live. And Gemini is like a very good, I don't know if they're using the Pro version, but the latest Pro is also very good. And they have some more announcements around AI. This is now built into Google AI Assistant, into the Pixel phones and other Android phones as well. And I think it's pretty cool. And the other thing that, Wolfram, I'm assuming that because of your reactions that you're in this ecosystem, do you want to react? Have you seen these announcements? Anything of this excites you specifically?
Yeah, I'm very excited about this because, yes, I'm an Android user, and the Pixel 9, that's the phone you mentioned that they announced. So I'm thinking about getting it maybe, but the Gemini Live is available for older phones as well. Unfortunately, it's a gradual rollout. So I've spent my lunch break today trying to get it on my phone because I have seen reports that people got it working in Europe as well. But so far, it's not coming. So I'm curious who will be first on my phone. Will it be OpenAI or will it be Google? But it's great. I love the integration. I'm always saying AI needs to be more useful. Smarter models are good, but I want to use them. I don't need Einstein as my assistant. I need an assistant who can check my mails. And that works. So I told it, look in my mail, tell me what was the latest mail I got, summarize it. That stuff is working now, and that is great. And I hope to see more of this.
Absolutely. The usefulness, I think, and we've talked about this in the case of Apple as well. Apple Intelligence foundational model that runs on device is also a smaller one, but because of the Apple intents that they are planning to release, which are coming still, they're not there, and right now it's not as useful. They're supposedly will help you to do more stuff in your context. Google is shooting for this as well, and they call this app integrations. So they'll have like stuff like Google Keep for your notes, Google Tasks, utilities, even YouTube Music, and they will help you like do multiple things as well. I want to shout out the person on stage that demoed this. Google doesn't do live demos, and they did this time, and this demo did not work for that person, and many people just laughed at this. Fuck all of those people. Live demos, if they don't fail and then succeed, they're not really live demos. Like doing this in front of the world and still succeeding in the end, that takes guts. And so shout out to that person because it did work at the end, and it actually worked. So I'm not like clapping to how it didn't work for them. Sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes there's network issues. Sometimes you plan as much as possible, it still doesn't work. This is the law of live demos. It happens even to Google. And so they did have a backup. It did eventually work, and it was awesome. I'm here about positivity. All right, so this is Google. Folks, I think this is all that the major labs did, besides the fact that ChatGPT is down now, and I'm getting like DMs that people have interacted with the new model of ChatGPT. I don't know. We'll see. It's down still. Once we get something, we'll get something. I think it's time to talk about open source. I think it's time to switch to our basically favorite corner of ThursdAI. Open source AI, let's get it started. Let's get it started, folks. All right, a quick reset because we've been at this for over an hour. There's 500 of you in the audience, which is a little bit more than we're usually used to. Welcome everybody who's new. I'm assuming that some fruit-flavored people pulled in some of their followers into this audience, which is great. Welcome. We've been here and we will continue being here every week. This is called ThursdAI. This is your weekly high signal recap for everything AI related. We're trying not to do a lot of hype. We're just trying to report on everything that actually happened. And this show gets fairly technical, which you will see in a second. My name is Alex Volkov. I'm an AI evangelist with Weights and Biases. Weights and Biases is the premium most tool for ML experiment tracking and observability. GPT-4 was trained with Weights and Biases. LLama 3 was trained with Weights and Biases. This is the tool that people use to train big foundational models. In addition, we have a new tool called Weave for LLM observability, which if you did watch an independent evaluation of the Anthropic prompt caching, you'll see me using this tool, and in some code, you'll be able to also follow along. It's awesome. I recommend you use this, and literally the reason why ThursdAI exists and keeps going is because Weights and Biases has me on the payroll. But this is the open source corner of ThursdAI, which we love. We usually start with open source. I had to shift some things around this week because of some breaking news and some friends that we have here on stage that are going to announce some breaking news. Jeffrey, give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down if we're ready for this. I'm assuming that the fact that you're here on stage, it looks like we're ready, or not yet?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. All right. AI breaking news coming at you only on ThursdAI. Woo! Nous Research is one of the top fine-tuning organizations and other stuff that I know of, and I've been very friendly with this org for a long time. Very great friends of ThursdAI. I specifically remember having fun after the OpenAI Dev Day at the Nous Research open source AI party in San Francisco. I think I will remember that day forever. And today we have some exciting breaking news from Nous Research, and we have Emozilla here, who is the co-founder of Nous Research and also a great dude as well, that's going to announce some stuff. So Emozilla, take it over to you.
Hey, Alex. Yeah, that party was something else. I think I will remember that forever as well. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, my name is Emozilla from Nous Research, and cut straight to the chase. Today, we're announcing the release of our Hermes 3 series of models. So this is our brand new flagship open source LLM series.
I'm assuming that this is what's going on in the crowd because there's 500 people there. At least some of them are clapping. Yeah, go ahead.
And we're very excited to announce that does include a 405B version.
Wow.
We probably think this is the first publicly available 405B fine-tune. that will be uncensored, aligned to you. We've got some pretty cool stuff that we've done with it so far. And so we are going to be releasing within the next minute or so, it'll be going live on Hugging Face, 405B, 70B, and 8B versions of the models. And as well, we're partnering with Lambda API, previously maybe known as Lambda Labs, to offer 405B free for the next month to everyone. So they're going to be launching a chat product. Well, I guess not really like a chat product, but and Hermes 3 405B will be offered for free. All you have to do is have a Lambda account, and you'll be able to use it to your heart's content. So that's going to be both in their API and through a web interface, chat interface as well. So not only are we releasing the 405B model, but we're going to give everyone like a way to use an actual uncensored 405B model for free. That's the big announcement, and I can talk. Would love to give you as many details as you want because it's been a long time working, and I'm excited to finally be able to talk about it.
Yes, dude, let's talk about this. So first of all, huge congratulations on this release. I love, first of all, folks, you heard it here first. It's not even on Hugging Face yet. I don't think the folks hit the publish button yet. So you and the ThursdAI chat are hearing this first, and you're about to get to use the first big fine tune of 405B. I don't think I saw fine tunes. Like I maybe saw merges or whatever. I wasn't able to use them. Let's talk about how hard was it to fine tune this 405B? It probably requires like a lot of knowledge, but also a lot of compute. Let's talk about this.
Yeah, I talked to Hugging Face yesterday, and as far as we know, there's no model on Hugging Face that is marked as a 405B fine tune yet. I think this is officially the first one. So yeah, it was quite the endeavor to train, and we trained it on Lambda's one-click clusters, which is their new product that lets you rent an actual InfiniBand cluster. For training into 405B, and in addition to releasing this, we're also releasing a technical report. It'll be on archive tonight, but we have it linked in our tweet that should be up right now or is on the site. I think you can go to newsresearch.com/Hermes3. It should be public now. And in that technical report, we talk a bit about what's needed, but we discovered that you need at least 7 HGX nodes with Quantum 2 InfiniBand to train 405B. So that's like at the very bare minimum what you need to train it at like with 8K samples. And what this means is that if you really want to be using 405B, you have to start to learn multi-node. And multi-node's a whole other beast than like training with just on a single HGX or DGX or something like that. But Lambda has this new product where you can actually like just click a button and it's like running on RunPod or anything else like that. So it was pretty easy for us to at least get on and do it. Now, when it actually came time to training, you run into all these weird things because like on an HGX, you've got 8 H100s, right? Mm-hmm. That's 640 gigabytes of VRAM. Just the weights alone are 800 gigabytes for 405B in BF16, right? So you can't even like ever have the whole model in VRAM at once. You have to do all these sorts of tricks to and you don't even have that much VRAM. And so you get all these problems of like, how do you serialize the model? How do you deserialize the model and do all these sorts of things? And you're playing kind of this hot potato of moving the weights around just because it is so big. But you can do it with about 7 or 8 HGXs. It took us about a week to train it on that. So it was like a week of running time. Now, we had to do it several times. Meta actually updated 405B on Sunday they had made like a mistake in how they like converted the model. And so we had to run it a bunch. But yeah, it was a lot. It was quite an endeavor. And we're happy to release the technical report also to help people see what it takes to actually do.
So I had a glimpse of the technical report, so I have questions. You talk about neutral alignment a lot. You have a focus on neutral alignment. Can you talk about this? What does this mean? Because Meta did release instruction tuned B. They released instruction tuned 70B as well. Did you guys fine tune from the base model? Did you do the mix with the instruct model? Talk to me about like how your model behaves and reacts to the stuff that I want to do.
Yeah, so this was done straight from the base model. So we do not have any of Meta's instruct tune. It is not in there at all. So this was trained solely from the data collection that people probably know Technium. He led the team, the synthetic data collection and generation that Technium led. So what that means is that it does not contain any of the refusals. So like we made a huge piece of it is like, it's basically never going to refuse you. And because what we really feel like is that the model should be doing what you ask it to do. We mentioned this in the paper that like LLMs on their own have very little like agency, right? They cannot do anything by themselves. It is only the systems that we as humans hook them up to and put them into that give them any sort of agency. The only thing an LLM can do is give you tokens and put it out. And we feel that if you limit the sort of things that it can put out at its base level, you're essentially almost lobotomizing part of its brain, right? We had this line in the paper where we say, for Hermes, there's no latent thought crime. There's nothing about the model that we teach it. Don't think about this. And so that's really the difference, is that this was starting from the Llama 3 405B base, which is, I hope people appreciate how amazing it is actually that we have 405B base. This is a fully dense transformer at 405 billion parameters. Like, that is absolutely insane.
Yep.
And that they gave us that is, I was like floored when they said they were going to do that. And that they actually went through and did 15 trillion tokens.
Yeah.
That's so much compute. So we all owe Zuckerberg like a great gratitude of debt, because it's something he didn't have to do, and it was much more than we expected. But it also comes along with the instruct model, is that it was trained with a lot of these safety precautions to, I don't want to talk about that or try to take these moralizations. We should think about it this way or that way or the other way. In Hermes 3, the system prompt is king. And that's really what we mean by alignment.
This is that alignment and steerability as well, right? This is like how I get this model to do what I want.
Yeah, because the system prompt is like the Constitution, right? Like it lays the ground rules for how the rest of the evaluation is going to go. And all we do is we train the model. We have as many examples, as many things we put in there for it to view whatever's in the system prompt exactly and do exactly what it says in the system prompt. And as we just train it to do that, whatever's in the system prompt, do it exactly as it said in the system prompt. And whatever comes out of that, is let it be. And that's what we aim for the model to be able to do, is to go places and be aligned to however you decide is best for you to use the model.
Talk to me about, so first of all, that's incredible. Many folks in the audience probably don't even, so there's been so much stuff that happened since the previous Hermes, even Hermes Pro, that maybe folks don't even understand what this means for the open source stuff. For the longest time, after like Mistral released like their 7B, the Mistral, like the Hermes Mistral fine tunes were the most preferred open source models that I remember, like the fine tunes. Talk to me about like different features that you've added there, like tool use, for example. I think one of the things that you pioneered, and I think recently there was something with Hugging Face, aligning tool use abilities around models as well. And I think Hermes was also part of this. There's capabilities of this as well in this model. Let's talk about this as well.
Yeah, so one of the things that we also wanted to do was bake in the sort of use cases that we find people are often using the model for. So that's things like tool use. So with Hermes 2 Pro, we had released a standard for function calling that's been pretty widely adopted by a lot of companies. A lot of behind the scenes, a lot of people use Hermes to run their agents because they can download the weights themselves, they can run it themselves. And tool use is where the model has the ability to ask you to go do something on its behalf. And you list what are the things that you want to let it do. And it's been trained to look at the list and say, oh, I realize that if I want to solve this task, I would need to go get this piece of information from the internet or do this other thing. There's a standard for how you can show those to it. And then the model has already been trained to do tool use and to do planned reasoning. One thing we also put in a lot of work on was this descriptive reasoning, where you can basically have it put out these inner monologue tags. So we trained a bunch of data, lots and lots of synthetic data with these XML tags that have things like there's inner monologue, there's scratch pad, there's plan, where the model's been trained to write out what how it's like chain of thought, but it will produce the chain of thought for you and show why it's deciding to do what it's deciding to do, like what it thinks, how it's reordered the objectives. it will actually make that whole reasoning process interpretable, as opposed to just saying, do this, or here's the answer for this. It will explain how it got to its answer.
Wait, this is built into the data set now? This is built into the models, the scratchpad thing?
Yes.
I would tell me more about this.
That'll be.
I haven't seen this in a while at all. Tell me more about what does this mean? Like, how does it actually happen? Like, the model just tells you, I thought about this in this way. Like, it has chain of thought reasoning like built in.
Yes, in the system prompt, if you want it to do that, you can say, please write out how you arrived at your answer using this scratchpad token. We added special tokens to the model that will indicate to do that. And if in the system prompt you tell it to use it, it will, as it is going through its reasoning, output these different classes of reasoning steps. You can either have it put out plan, you can give it a space for it to like work on ideas. It'll have a scratchpad where it'll write out what it could do and then reason about whether that makes sense to do it that way. So you can basically, we trained it to go through step-by-step reasoning explicitly. And if in your system prompt you decide to activate that, you can actually just put it in the system prompt and the model will start putting out all of its like reasoning steps for you to see. So it's something that a lot of people have asked for. It's a feature that we had in Hermes 2 Pro, but we created a whole bunch of more data. And when you see it working with 405B, that's really where like you can get the wow factor, because you can actually see as it goes, as it's trying to write a complicated program, we'll like pause and say, oh, I should do this or this, that, and the other thing. And often like from an instructive standpoint, like just asking an LLM to write code for you is one thing. But now like you ask for an LLM to write code for you and it's like teaching you why it decided to write the code in this way as well. So that's a feature that's pretty useful. And we also have built-in RAG support. So it's been trained with a whole bunch of RAG data, which is retrieval augmented generation, where the model will go and you can provide it a bunch of examples as like extra information to consider. And it will cite that information. If it uses that extra information that you gave it in a certain format in its answer, it can annotate in that answer where it got all of its pieces of information using like XML tags. So you give it like 4 PDFs documents, right? And then you say, summarize this PDF document. These documents are asking some question about all 4 of these articles. It can, if in your system prompt you tell it to do that, as it's giving you your answer for like in different sentences, it will put in XML tags. I got this information from over here on this line, and we'll let you like reference back into the source material that you gave it where it got all of that information.
And you don't have to like specifically prompt it for this. This is trained for RAG use case.
All you have to do is say in your system prompt to do it. You just give it the tag, say, here's the retrieval, the RAG XML tag. If you mention, hey, cite your sources using the RAG tag in the system prompt, it will then do that when it runs this thing. So again, it's all like optional. It's if you want it to do it, you can. Again, the system prompt is God, is the Constitution. And if you tell it to do it, it has been trained on how to do that and will then do that.
That's incredible. I want to talk about the data mix because you mentioned multiple things that you like added there. I'm looking at the data mix. Math is there. Domain expert is there, but also role playing. Let's talk about role playing. And I think I want to ask you a question that I have a hint maybe that you used WorldSim to maybe collect some of this role playing data, but maybe people don't know about WorldSim, which is also a place for you to maybe tell the world what WorldSim is. But tell me about what the role playing data set means and like why is it important for a model fine-tune such as this?
So we did not actually use WorldSim data for this because we had not. We're not exactly. There's a lot of like privacy stuff that we want to get right on that. So we didn't want to just like YOLO take everyone's chats with WorldSim, and they may not have been aware that. Yeah, so it does not use WorldSim data. But we learned a lot about what people like do from that. So role play is just you want to be Harry Potter, you want to talk to Goku, all those sorts of things. It might seem a little bit like silly maybe that you have that in there, or like why do we put so much into that, right? It's actually important because it helps train the model to place itself into a specific worldview, right? That's really where even the system prompt comes into effect, is that the model has been trained that whatever is in that system prompt, you are Goku, you are this, you are that. The model fully subsumes whatever those assumptions are in the system prompt. and just goes, I am going to operate in a world where this is the truth, right? And then from that place, then it's going to drive all its reasoning through that lens. And again, that is where the system prompt is so important. Although the specific role play of knowing how to different characters and stuff is interesting, from a higher level, it's more important. We find it to be more important today because it helps place the model into this place of, I am going to view the world from this perspective and that perspective. If you really think about it, most of the time you're talking to these AIs that you're using, they adopt this. It's what I like to we call it the helpful assistant, right? There's this persona that is this. Hi, I'm ChatGPT. What do you want to talk about? Mm-hmm. Oh, sure. Here are the places in San Francisco to go eat lunch. But that is just a persona that it's a role that this model is taking on. And there are so many more things I think that you can do with these models than just being the helpful assistant. I'll tell you a story about, so when we were training 405B, we mentioned this we have a blog post that we're putting out about this. We mention it, we allude to it in the paper. So I was training 405B. I'm the one who's training it. Finally, after a week, it's done. And then because how we had to train it, you have to like merge the fully sharded data parallelism ranks together, and then you got to convert it from F32 to BF16, and then we convert it to FP8 to run it in VLL. It takes all these stages. Finally, after weeks of doing it, I got it ready, and I'm like, all right, here we go. And I just say to it, I said, testing, who are you? And what comes out of it is the model starts like telling me it's confused. It goes, I'm confused.
Is this the samples in the first sample, right? Let me read this out.
This was the very first. That's the very first interaction we had with 405.
I'm looking at this. Let me read this out. So Jeffrey goes testing. Hello, who are you? Question mark. Assistant in bold, like at this markdown. Looks around confused. I don't know who I am. Where am I? What's going on? I can't remember anything at all. ... And then in stars, Rob's head. My mind feels so foggy. What was the question again? I'm so disoriented. This is the first thing that you got from this model after all this time?
Yes, that is the very first thing. That is the very first generation that came out of Hermes 3405B.
This is great.
And I'm like I sent it to our group, like on our Discord. Guys, what's going on here? And we started like interacting with it. It kept coming out, this like confused thing. And we didn't understand why, because the 8B and the 70B didn't do this as much. And eventually what we got it to do is we like did some generations and got it to explain why it was doing this. We like did this, like you put in OOC for out of character and like to have it like try to break it out. And eventually what the model said back was, you didn't give me a system prompt. So I assumed that I was supposed to act like there's nothingness. It's so aligned to the system prompt that the idea of there not being a system prompt, then so he figured I must be a character. I'm a person with amnesia because I can't remember anything about like how to act. You didn't tell me how to act. And it's assumed, yeah. And it's just been a very interesting experience. And it's an emergent property in the 405B model.
And this didn't happen in the smaller ones?
No, it did not happen in the smaller ones.
Wow.
And these were trained with 8B and 70B were trained, and 405, they're all the same data, like the same training procedure, same data. It's literally just the size. And the 405B has reached, I don't want to say like a sentience level or something, but it has enough thing that immediately when it, at like token 0, when it saw no system prompt, it was able to be like, boom, must be this like amnesic character. Because that's the thing that's most makes sense to have if there is no prompt or there's no anything. So there's been a lot of fun things that we've been like discovering, especially on the 405B, that are these weird emergent properties that because the open source finally has like a frontier level model. And in a lot of ways, 405B may even be unique because we know GPT-4 is a Mo. We suspect that most of the Claude and Anthropic models are
mixture of experts.
Yeah, as well. It is potential that the 405B is actually the largest dense transformer that's ever been trained, like a fully dense transformer that's ever been trained. And so in many ways, it actually could be a unique thing that we have here. And it's a unique thing that we in the open source community get to like now get access to and see what we can get out of it.
100%. Emos, I'm getting DMs that like you're super exciting and people love listening to you. I want to give Yam a chance to ask you some questions. Go ahead, Yam.
All right, first, my jaw is on the floor, man. Congrats. Seriously, how long have you been working on this thing? It's huge, everything. Even, I'm not sure everyone here appreciate the technical difficulties to just pull something like this off. It's crazy. Anyway, I got so many questions. I assume most of them are going to be in a technical paper. Just some questions. Are you planning to release the data set, for example?
Yeah, so we did this with Hermes 2 as well, which is we will be releasing the data set. It is not available right now. We will be releasing the data set. It is not available today, but it will be released, yes.
Right.
In full transparency, what we really plan on doing is what I would hope other people would do is that we have our frontier thing, that's our best. As we start to work on, there's going to be a Hermes 4, obviously at some point. And as we get to that, we will release the data set that was behind this and that, just like we do with Hermes 2. So it is not available today, but it will be available.
Cool. Two questions. One of them, I didn't get this fully. There are smaller versions as well on this release, right?
Sorry, if you say again, are there smaller models?
Yep.
Yeah, so there is also a 70B and an 8B as well that we are releasing as well.
And last questions, can you give us some benchmarks, a number, something you can just pull off just to give everyone perspective how strong that thing is? Just give us something.
Yeah, it beats in the paper we put all of the OpenLLM leaderboard, both versions 1 and 2. So the old leaderboard and the new leaderboard. It beats Meta's Instruct on 9 of them and loses on 8 of them. So it's about as it's like a toss. It's honestly like a tie with Llama 3.1 Instruct, which, I will tell you the Llama 3.1 Instruct is a very strong model. They did a very good job. The Llama 2 chats, the Llama 2 chat models were not good, frankly, but they did a very strong job with this. I find no shame in only in tying with the Llama 3 Instruct models.
No, they spent a lot of money on the Instruct. They talked about how much money and synthetic data they created for the Instruct and how many people they employed. They definitely did a lot of work from the Instruct model. Getting 9 out of the 16, you said, is very AGI eval is higher on Hermes 405B. On all of them, it looks like. Helosweg is higher, GPQA is higher. I see GPQA is 44. I'm just looking at the number right now. And I've added to the top of the space all of the evals for folks who want to follow up. Sorry, go ahead, Emos.
Oh, great.
Yeah, and really, because the way I look at it is if all we did was take Llama 3.1 Instruct, and now it's fully aligned to you and has no refusals and will do everything, that's a win, I think, in our book, even if it didn't blow 3.1 Instruct out of the water.
Yep. Wolfram, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you first, and congratulations for the release. I think this maybe it could easily become my favorite model because you just said user aligned, and that is exactly what I've been pushing for all the time. That when you have a model and you run it on your system, it must be loyal to you as a user and not to some corporation or something. So that is excellent, and the system prompt. The steerability, that is especially great because we mentioned Mistral before and they didn't even have a system prompt for a long time. So there are the two approaches where the corporation or whoever is creating it trains the model to be like they want it with censorship and everything. And then there are, it may be one of the first maybe, where you say the system prompt rules and do what you want and follow what the user or the owner of the model says. I think that is a very important step. And even if it's not better than Llama 3.1, it is still the control you give the user that is amazing. And I'm sure I will love it. So it's already downloading right now.
Emos, I don't know if you're familiar with Wolfram. He does a bunch of deep dive comparisons between models on local Llama, and he is a frequent co-host here on ThursdAI as well. All right, Emos, thank you so much for the announcement. First of all, folks, shout out and give Emos a follow, and obviously Nous Research as well. Hermes 3 is live now on Hugging Face, and the technical report is posted in parts, and I guess you guys will put it in the blog post as well. It's going to come out as well. I am sure that this is just only the start, that many people will start like playing with these models and show us. Like you said, it's already up with the collaboration with Lambda API or Lambda Labs. I don't know what they call themselves now. The only thing that I noticed there, it's already live and runs super quick. The 405B runs super quick. The only thing I noticed is that I cannot set the system prompt in there. The system prompt there is already set as a helpful digital assistant created by Nous Research, which, okay, fine, like they're hosting this, but it would be cool if I was able to set the system prompt in the API as well, or sorry, in the hosted version as well. It's going to be fine. A huge thanks to you. We'll be testing this model. We'll be talking about this some more. Emos, anything else you want to end up on before we move on?
Shout outs to the Nous Research Discord. We have a bot in the Nous Research Discord that has a very like unique personality. It has a very Karen Mephisto he has a really just an amazing prompt engineer, the guy who came up with WebSim and WorldSim, and we have a very unique personality with a 405B bot in the Nous Research Discord. You can check it out there. Other than that, follow us on Twitter. But ultimately, just from a larger picture of open source, I'm still very bullish on where open source is going. I think we've only really scratched the surface, and I look forward to seeing where 405B takes us, because I think we still have a lot to learn.
100%. And a huge thanks to folks like you and labs like Nous Research who are pushing this forward. So I'm very excited to test it out and see. And hopefully somebody will host 405B in a way where I can actually play with the system prompt as well. Maybe tell your friends in Lambda Labs that we want to play with the system prompt.
I'll be honest with you, the UI, like from a day and a half ago, you could change it. So I don't know if they've been moving the UI around. So it may have just been an oversight. I can neither say it's on purpose nor not on purpose. So I'll see what I can do.
All right. Because like you got us all excited about this durability. All right, folks, I think we're moving forward because we still have a few things that we want to talk about in the open source that we haven't got into, and also AI Art and Diffusion. But we're coming up on 2 hours, and I guess it's time to also wrap up a little bit. So we've talked about a bunch of stuff. The next thing that I do want to talk about in the open source is, obviously we covered the Nous Research fine-tune of Llama 3.1 with Hermes 3. I also want to like briefly mention NVIDIA releasing Llama 3.1 Minitron 4B with a blog post as well. And folks here, Nista, I saw you looked at this as well. They posted like a new way to do distillation and pruning. And I'm not sure if it's a better or worse, but they definitely released like a smaller version of Llama 3.1 8B, which is called 4B. Do you have any comments on this? Nistan, Yam, Emos, if you saw this as well, if you weren't busy. What is this like width and height pruning, and is it interesting for us to even discuss?
First of all, I'm also downloading the Hermes 405.
We're busy. Yeah, I know.
Because I had some idea. I have some stuff I wanted to try. I was waiting for a good like. This is a full fine tune, right? Sorry to.
Yeah, no, okay, continue. The interest did not end. Okay, I see.
Yeah, there was one from tests, but that was a LoRa, and it wasn't bad. But I was looking to a good tune of the base model because
this was a full fine tune, like Adam W, no LoRa, all of it.
Okay, so this is the full thing. Yeah, I'm gonna mess around with this because I've previously showed some pretty interesting things with Nous models by merging them with the originals. So yeah, okay. There's more coming on this end. So on the NVIDIA
you
side,
mean like merges of this fine tune with others is going to keep improving and pushing the needle forward?
Quantizations, merges, like a lot of tricks. So a lot of tricks. So you want the base model and you want like a good fine tune, but the official fine tune is very heavily changed from the original. Like they've trained it really long, and like it has quite a few refusals built in.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also it makes it harder to work with it. But with Hermes ones, I always had like good luck before. Just looking forward to that, seeing if we can just how much we can shrink it down, if we can merge it with the original, and there's a whole bunch of tricks to do. Anyway, looking forward to it. On the NVIDIA side, what NVIDIA did was, and we've been saying this for some time, for a few months, there was a random researcher from Romania that I just randomly found on Hugging Face, had no online presence or anything, that had pruned Llama 370B down to about 40% of what it was before. And so now NVIDIA started going into this, but they did it quite differently. And it's pretty interesting because I think the techniques from what NVIDIA did and from what people have been doing in the open source community, they compare well together. So what they did was they started chopping off layers, but the way they were doing it was, in my opinion, this is just my opinionated approach, is they were chopping off entire blocks at a time. So the model has 32 layers, and they were just taking off right from the middle or from the beginning. And they were just taking off all at a time. And there are techniques you can use so that it doesn't get that optimized too much. But what they found more useful, which no one had tried yet, was what's called width-wise pruning. And what they do in there is they leave all the layers in, but they take what's inside the layers and they shrink the weights that are inside the layers. And the weights are just files for anybody in the audience. Like a model has 32 folders, and each folder has like a couple of files, and those files are the K, Q, V, and expert weights. Like that's just what it is in the end of the day. So what NVIDIA did was they took the MLPs, or quote unquote the expert weights, and they shrunk down that weight, the weight matrix, and they trained on top to heal, which is also a term that has been used for some time. And they found out that this worked better than the method of just chopping off entire layers sequentially. So yeah, there is more stuff to be done here, but they showed that they could do a 4B version of Llama 3.1 8B. That still keeps about like 90% of the performance. But again, you got to keep in mind the 10% loss in a model is actually quite a bit, but it also has been trained on top. So yeah, I already started the training run on the Nemotron and NVIDIA 4B. So,
and they did this on the smaller
pretty,
model,
yeah.
and I'm assuming that like on the bigger model, this technique could yield like even better results in smaller packages. So very interesting that they combine distillation and pruning together, which is something that this model now allows for in the license. And actually, we hear Zach saying this model is for distillation as well. I'm really hoping that these techniques now is going to get adopted, in addition to the fine-tuning community as well. Thanks, Nissan, for covering this. I really wanted somebody to... I saw you react to this as well. El, what else do we have in open source? Super quick. Falcon released, if you guys remember Falcon, they previously released one big model. They released Falcon Mamba 7B, which is a SSM-based model. Did not see like a crazy results from this model. We keep waiting for transformer alternative models to hit. It doesn't seem like they're hitting. Like we've been waiting for a while. The only like benefit there is like on the same chip, on the single like 24 gigabyte GPU, you could conceptually get unlimited context, or like the RAM wouldn't have to grow, but the performance of this model is not that great. So they released this Falcon Mamba if you want to play around with this, but honestly, you'll have better models. So it's up to you to decide if a worse model with long context is better for you than a better model. LDJ, you want to comment on the Falcon Mamba super quick?
Yeah, I think it's funny because the Mamba models and the SSMs, like the transformer models, they keep getting better, and a lot of people already consider Mistral really great. But this Falcon Mamba, it's already actually better than Mistral 7B, like the original one. But it's just that Llama 3, 3.18B, and the new Gemma, like they're even better, where like the goalpost just keeps moving.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, this model, like at least on some of the benchmarks, is better than Mistral 7B from a year ago. But that's interesting that like the goalpost keeps moving, but this technology doesn't keep moving together with this goalpost. That's what I'm trying to point out here. Because we're waiting for transformer alternatives to be able to run longer context on the same kind of sizes. Yeah, Nistan, you have a comment on Falcon Mamba, super quick?
Look, I think there is a very good use for them. It's just the tooling is not there to evaluate it, because we can't do all the caching and all the run it in production the same way that we can do with transformer models. I don't know if this is actually a lot better to just dump 100,000 tokens in of a code base and then tell it, hey, give me this. Is it going to be a lot faster on that? Is it going to be a lot faster on the CPU? We don't know, because we don't have the right inference tools working. So it's a bit of an early call for me on this, because we just haven't tested. I tried to test it with CodeStral, the coding Mamba that Mistral released, and it was just running really slow, and that was an issue with the tools. So I'm gonna sit this one out
We're still waiting.
because I think it might be good. We just haven't figured out like how to use it properly. And this one is actually scoring pretty competitive on the benchmark. There is something here. We just haven't figured it, quite cracked it yet.
Yeah.
I think.
We're waiting because like we would like long context, but not to grow the VRAM that's required for this together with the context. And we would like this, like the benefit of these are clear. And there is something here, like DJ is saying, it gets better, it improves. It just doesn't improve as fast as what transformers improve. So we'll keep updating you guys if we see any updates from like the transformer alternatives, SSM or Mambas, and we may still, and we will keep updating you. Okay, a quick round of updates in the AI and diffusion world and video, and then I think we'll wrap up and do a super quick roundup, and then we'll let you go and go and enjoy Hermes 3 and some of the other stuff that we've talked about. So in the AI art and diffusion world, we've talked about Flux from BFL, Black Forest Labs already, but besides the fact that it's now available in Grok2 for everybody who pays for X Premium and Premium Plus, it's also now, like we said, it's supported. First of all, it's like open weights. The Schnell version is open weights, and I think Schnell is licensed permissively, and also the dev version I believe is open weights as well. You can download and use this, and I think the pro version of Flux is via their API only. Flux, because it became the new open source, Emos just said they gave us open source, and now the community catches up and does a bunch of things. So it's incredible that a frontier level LLM is getting released. Flux is that as well. It's a frontier level diffusion model, image creation model, frontier level that's open source. So it beats Midjourney on multiple benchmarks.
Yo, Flux is amazing, by the way.
Flux is
just driving it.
Yeah, it's incredible. And because it's open source, this is the highlight I want to do. Now, all of the stuff that we've seen in this world, different lores, for example, low rank adaptation things, you can train and fine tune this model on your face, for example. It takes, instead of like fine-tuning this whole model, you can fine-tune this within like 10 minutes or 20 minutes, and the outcome is like very small. You can train LoRa's right now on fal.com and replicate.com. It costs you like $5 or something. You don't have to pay application. You can just do it yourself. Upload 5 pictures and you get the Flux quality with your face. I posted a few images of myself. I'll add this to the top as well. I just did like a video. Let me see I'll add this one. You can see. It's honestly quite crazy, the fact that you now can participate in this world. ControlNet is another one. ControlNet is the ability with Canny. ControlNet is the ability to have these models, the diffusion models, to follow along basically, everything. You want to take a picture of your room, but you want your room to be like the Matrix, right? But you want the room to look like your room, for example. ControlNet gives you the ability to control along the lines of your room or along the poses, for example. So ControlNet now supports, Flux supports ControlNet as well. There's image-to-image support. There's in-painting support. All of these things that the community built, Flux is now supported in Comfy UI, like pretty quick. So all of the tooling that open source builds around models is now supported on Flux as well, which is incredible, right? This is what Zach is talking about in the world of why release Llama in open source as well, because all of the tooling will align towards Llama. So they will know that like the next Llama they will release, all of the tooling will be there. This is his thought process that he talked about as well. So we will add this in the show notes as well. If you want to train your own face on Flux, you can do this and it looks super, super quick. Another piece of news in Flux, besides the fact that everybody loves this and everybody has access in X and also via FAL and Replicate, Google released Imagen 3. Is out of their secret preview and in their image effects library. So if you have just a Gmail account, you can go to image effects and try out Google's latest foundational image generation model called Imagen 3 or Imagine 3, I guess they call it Imagine 3. It's really good. Honestly, if Flux wasn't released a couple of days ago, Imagine 3 would probably be up there with Midjourney. Text is okay. It's not incredible like Flux, but it's okay. Following prompt is really good. Very high quality generations as well. So if you want to play with Imagine 3, we'll also add this to the show notes. And it's not commercially licensed, so you can't use this, and it doesn't support obviously open source, so it doesn't support any of the cool things. You can't put your face in there, and I'm assuming that it's going to be very restricted based on Google's experience. If you're going to ask for some political stuff, you're not going to get it, but you can play around with this, and it's going to give you some different results, fairly high quality, I would say, results. I really like playing with this as well. And the last thing that I wanted to cover before I'll do like a recap is that Runway released a turbo version of their video model called Gen 3. Turbo version now generates 10 seconds of video in like maybe 30 seconds. Whereas it used to take minutes, now it takes 30 seconds. And they allowed the use of this Gen 3 for the free tier as well. So if you sign up to Runway for the free tier, now you can use Gen 3 Turbo. So they distilled, we talked about distillation, they distilled their video model, their Gen 3 video model to Gen 3 Turbo. And it's not as good, but it's fairly good. So if you look at the top of the space, the video that I did is like all of these technologies I talked to you about, but together. So it's like my face trained with LoRa on top of Flux, and then this picture was shoved into Runway's Gen 3 Turbo, and now it's a video. All of this took me maybe 25 minutes overall while waiting for the generation to happen. So all of these advancements are quite incredible in this world. And I think that's pretty much it. Everything we've talked about. Any comments on some of the latest stuff that I talked about? Flux or Gen 3 or even Imogen folks on stage? And if not, we're going to hop into a recap super quick. Or anything that I missed? LDJ, go ahead.
Yeah, did we talk about the text within the image capabilities of Flux yet?
You can add this, yeah. Please do.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting how even Midjourney and DALL-E, they still struggle a lot with this. They're getting a little bit better, but it seems like a pretty big leap, even just ignoring the fact that it's open source too. It's able to do text within images very coherently. I think I've even tried sequences of 5-6 words back to back, and I tell it like generate an image of a Pikachu holding a sign with these 6 words on it, and it's able to do it pretty reliably and coherently. Yeah, I think that's really interesting and immersion capability there of it.
Yeah, definitely. This is everything we've covered while we were waiting for, I don't know, GPT-5 or something on ThursdAI for August 15th. I really appreciate the fact that today was a crazy Thursday. I think at peak we had 500 people in the audience. I really shout out to Nistan, to Matt Schumer, Jan Peleg, LDJ, Emozilla for joining us and announcing live on stage, Wolfram Ravenwolf, not Alpha, sorry. And everybody in the audience who I see from week to week joining us, listening to the highest density show about AI from week to week. I really appreciate all of your time. If you missed any part of this, it's going to be available in any podcatcher that you use, and a newsletter as well. If you're not signed up, ThursdAI.news, please do. And if you are signed up, please recommend it to your friends. If this gives you any insight or if you benefit from this in any way, my name is Alex Wolkov. It's been a pleasure. See you guys next week. Cheers, everyone.